happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land. Here age relives fond memories of the past, and here youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future. Disneyland is dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America, with the hope that it will be a source of joy and inspiration to all the world.
Hello everyone, and welcome aboard the world-famous Jungle Cruise. My name is Felipe, and I'll be your skipper, guide, social director, and dance instructor for the next few minutes as we navigate our way through the rich history of this first-class attraction. The Jungle Cruise is one of Disney's most iconic attractions, where adventure seekers of all ages are taken on a scenic riverboat cruise down several of the world's most exotic waterways and encounter the grand wildlife and wonder that inhabits such lands. Jungle Cruise's playful nature is the signature element of this opening day attraction, an attraction so wild that it has more puns than it does real animals. But before we begin our tribute to this Disney park wonder, I would like to ask you to please keep your arms, hands, feet, legs, head, ears, eyes, toes, nose, face, loved ones, and valuables inside the boat at all times as we explore the hilariously whimsical and hopelessly entertaining Jungle Cruise.
Man is feeling blue. Hear his heartbeat, a little tattoo. Dig it, do, dig it, do. Dig it, do, dig it, do. Now you love me.
Jungle Cruise's existence can be directly cited from Walt Disney's fascination with adapting storytelling adventures directly from the natural world. This appeal led him to develop the True Life Adventures, a series of 14 nature documentaries that Walt Disney Productions produced from 1948 to 1960. These films were the stepping stones that allowed the idea for Jungle Cruise, and Adventureland as a whole, to take root in Walt's original plans for Disneyland. Before the tramp steamers could set sail for Schweitzer Falls, however, Walt Disney and his team of Imagineers at WED Enterprises had to first overcome 3 major hurdles. The first of these hurdles were the animal stars. From the start, Walt wanted to incorporate real living animals as part of the attraction. However, animal specialists warned that the captive animals would, for a lack of a better word, behave as animals, and could not be counted on to perform as needed.
But I found that the animals in captivity are not themselves. What you see of an animal in the zoo is not actually what the animal is when he's out in nature itself.
Wanting more control in showcasing wildlife, Walt decided that the studio's recent efforts in creating the giant squid featured in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea would serve as the basis for a revolutionary effect in the Imagineers' bag of tricks: audio animatronics. If a giant squid could be done, so too could dozens of crocodiles, lions, and giraffes. With the animal cast secured, the team went on to address the second hurdle: the environment. For those of you who aren't familiar with Southern California, the Anaheim landscape looks far from any dense tropical jungle. Imagineer and horticulturalist Bill Evans was put in charge of turning this former patch of orange groves into a lush rainforest. Evans planted several species such as coral trees, ficus, and bamboo, and salvaged dozens of palms from being torn down by the construction of the Santa Ana Freeway extension nearby. Local advertisements were posted asking anyone to donate any of their trees or palms they were looking to get rid of. Evans also consolidated a stand of existing eucalyptus trees on the western side of the property for additional cover, and by doing so, shifted Adventureland to the left side of the park. Several of the remaining orange trees on property were used as well. Some had their flower blossoms and fruits removed, while other trees were upturned so that their exposed roots would appear to be unruly vines. Although, even with all of Evans' commendable work, the dream jungle could not grow overnight, and Walt and the Imagineers would just have to make do with what they had. The final hurdle was the ride design itself. In charge of this front was Imagineer Harper Goff, who dug out troughs in a sandbox to visualize how the curves of the real river layout would be like. Goff took heavy inspiration from the 1951 film The African Queen for the ride's show scenes and boat designs. It was decided that the boat vehicle's steering wouldn't actually be controlled by the skipper, considering how risky it would be if an actual accident occurred. Instead, the boats were designed to travel on an underwater rail that ensured the vehicle's path. The only control the skipper was left with over the boat was its speed in forward and backwards direction. The water was dyed brown to hide the underwater mechanics and the fact that the river was only 4 feet deep in most places. Today, the river uses a bluish-green dye. With everything set in place, the Jungle Cruise opened with the rest of Disneyland on July 17, 1955, to a myriad of intrepid guests ready to explore the foreign waters of the world's rivers. A few years after the park opened, Walt would occasionally overhear families mention amongst themselves that they wouldn't re-experience certain attractions on subsequent visits, since there was nothing new about them. From this insight, Walt quickly realized that his park would have to constantly evolve so that the guest experience would always be refreshing. Imagineer and animator Mark Davis was tasked by Walt to plus the attraction, adding many of the ride's humorous visual gags. Davis crafted the elephant bathing pool, as well as the unlucky encounter between a safari and a rhino looking to get his point across. During the 1960s and 70s, dozens of show elements and scenes were either added or modified from their original state. Among these changes was the noticeable shift in tone for the skipper guides. Since opening day, the skippers acted as straightforward guides, taking the journey through the jungle with serious conviction. The introduction of these new witty show scenes, however, necessitated the skippers to morph into the ad-libbing comics we're familiar with today. The mid-1990s marked another turning point for Jungle Cruise and Adventureland, with the arrival of a world-renowned professor of archaeology. During the design phase for the Indiana Jones adventure, Imagineers had proposed the idea of transporting guests to the Forbidden Temple via the Jungle Cruise boats. The idea was scrapped when it was ruled that the redesign would strip the standalone Jungle Cruise of its own essence. Despite the abandoned plan, Indiana Jones still managed to influence the Jungle Cruise and the surrounding Adventureland in superficial ways. The construction of the Indiana Jones adventure required the rerouting of Jungle Cruise's journey. Additionally, the boats, which originally featured white hulls and a decorative striped canopy, were redesigned into a more weathered look, appearing more comfortably within the Indiana Jones aesthetic. The rest of Adventureland was refreshed in order to evoke the pretense of the 1930s, the same period of time that the Indiana Jones attraction takes place in. Jungle Cruise, of course, did not remain limited to just Anaheim. Its popularity allowed it to expand at other Disney parks, including opening day attractions at Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World, Tokyo Disneyland, and Hong Kong Disneyland. A seasonal holiday overlay of the attraction, entitled Jingle Cruise, debuted at Magic Kingdom and Disneyland in 2013. In 2010, the tropical environment found at Disneyland's Jungle Cruise was declared an actual self-sustaining ecosystem, complete with a proper tree canopy and nutrient-efficient soil. In just 55 years, Walt's long-desired dream of a real jungle in the middle of Anaheim had finally come true. Amongst the countless beautiful trees and plants that reside in the dense jungle surrounding Disneyland's Jungle Cruise, stands one massive palm tree with a unique storied history. Planted in 1896, this Canary Island date palm stood on the farm of the Dominguez family, which occupied 30 acres of orange grove-laden land in what would eventually become the New Orleans Square district of Disneyland, 70 years later. In 1954, Walt purchased the remaining 10 acres of land from Ron Dominguez, who asked Walt to preserve the family's palm as it had been given to Ron's grandparents as a wedding gift. Walt earnestly obliged to the request, but because the palm stood on the site where Disneyland's parking lot was earmarked for, he had the 15-ton palm carefully transplanted to its future home in Adventureland. As for Ron himself, he eventually took a summer job as a ticket taker at Disneyland, working at the park's front gate on its opening day in 1955. Within a year, Ron began holding several supervising positions within the park, progressively working his way up to park management in 1962. By 1970, Ron had become director of operations, and in 1974, vice president of Disneyland, and finally executive vice president in 1990. In 1994, Ron Dominguez retired from the Walt Disney Company and was honored with his very own window on Main Street, USA, just a few hundred feet away from his family's cherished palm. The queue of Disneyland's Jungle Cruise is found inside of a rustic two-story boathouse. Guests board their boat at the dock and are greeted by their skipper, who endlessly churns out jokes as the passengers are loaded in. Once they depart, the skipper introduces themselves to the passengers and dryly informs them that they will never return from this 3-hour cruise. The first third of the cruise takes place on the rivers of Southeast Asia, where the boat enters a misty rainforest marked by the ruins of an ancient city. The ruins are inhabited by giant butterflies, Bengal tigers, crocodiles, king cobras, and spiders. The boat then drifts into a pool shared by a herd of playful Indian elephants. Leaving the elephant bath, the boat enters the African portion of the river voyage, coming across a safari camp that's been taken over by a family of gorillas. As the skipper rounds the bend, the boat nearly collides with the signature Schweitzer Falls. After cruising by a pair of African elephants, the boat enters the attraction's most elaborate scene, where the passengers can observe numerous species of savanna animals, including a pride of lions feasting on protecting a sleeping zebra. Nearby, a safari party can be seen climbing up a tree to be out of reach of an angry rhinoceros. The boat then stumbles upon a bloat of hippos as it makes its way through the terribly offensive indigenous village. The boat soon comes across Schweitzer Falls again, only this time, the passengers are able to see the elusive backside of water. Leaving the falls, the skipper navigates their way through the piranha-infested South American third of the river voyage. Before returning to the dock, the boat encounters Trader Sam, an indigenous tradesman who offers to trade 2 of his shrunken heads for 1 of yours. Magic Kingdom and Tokyo Disneyland's versions remain roughly the same, except the Southeast Asia and South America scenes are reversed, and the boats at Tokyo's attraction, where it is subtitled as Wildlife Expeditions, travel in the opposite direction as California and Florida's. An interesting thing to look out for at Walt Disney World's Jungle Cruise is the tail end of a Lockheed Model 12 airplane. Ever wonder where it came from? The other half was formerly featured in the Casablanca scene inside the Great Movie Ride at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Hong Kong Disneyland's Jungle River Cruise is also pretty much the same ride, however the ending differs completely from all the others in that it features a brief skirmish between an ancient fire and water god. Well folks, I hope you enjoyed your trip around the jungle. As we come out ahead, I certainly hope you've enjoyed this tribute to Walt Disney's Jungle Cruise, a wayward expedition populated with wild creatures so perilous they are bolted to the ground for your safety. Jungle Cruise will forever be one of the most whimsical attractions found within the Disney theme parks, an attraction that spurred Walt Disney to incite his Imagineers to continuously plus their work, a philosophy that remains a hallmark of the Disney parks today, forever fulfilling Walt's rhetoric that Disneyland would never be complete, as long as there is imagination left in the world.